Did you ever have a meal growing up that you just loved? Anytime it was a special occasion or something to celebrate or a birthday or something, that was what you wanted to have. Or maybe a recipe that is so easy, so simple, so delicious that it's your go-to recipe for anytime you have somebody over or you have to bring something for a potluck. This next recipe is that for me. It's something that I grew up eating. My mother made for me over and over again. And when we had to switch to gluten-free, thankfully it was something that was really easy to transition into gluten-free. And it tastes the same. It's fantastic. This recipe is something that my mother always called chicken Divan. I have no idea where she got it. I don't even know if she remembers. It's been years and years and years in our family, and I hope that you enjoy it as well. But first, if you're returning, welcome back. If you are just joining us, welcome. My name is Melissa. This channel is dedicated to gluten-free, celiac-safe baking and cooking tips and recipes. If you want me to try a certain recipe, leave it in the comments and I will do my best to do so. Or if you have any tips on any of these recipes, leave them so that the whole community can benefit from them. And now let's get started. So first, go ahead and cook your chicken, your rice, and your broccoli, and then we're gonna get started on the sauce. Our sauce is really simple. It's just mayo, some gluten-free cream of mushroom soup, and curry powder, and that's it. First, you're gonna start with 2 cans of cream of mushroom soup. And again, if you don't need to be gluten-free, it doesn't matter if it's gluten-free, but make sure you pay attention to the cans you're using if you do need to be gluten-free, because a lot of cream mushroom soup has gluten in it. Then you're going to go with 1 cup of mayo and mix that in. And then you're going to add in 2 teaspoons of curry powder. Now the curry powder is one of those where if you really love curry seasoning, then you can go with more. If it's really not your thing, then you can go with less, and you can kind of adjust based on your taste. My kids and I really like the flavor of it, so I do 2 very heaping rounded teaspoons of curry powder. But I would go with 1 to 2 as kind of a guideline when you first start, and you can play with it as you need to. Go ahead and mix this up with a spoon or a spatula until it's nice and well blended, and then set it to the side. We will use it later. One of the interesting things about this sauce is even though mayo is like one of the key ingredients, it doesn't really taste a lot like mayo. The curry powder helps cut it a good bit. And so even the family members that I have that don't like mayo as a general rule end up liking this sauce a good bit. Next, you're going to grease a casserole dish. I tend to go with a 9x13, but you can go with more if you're going to be bulking up this recipe some, or you can do smaller if you're going to make a smaller amount. It really doesn't matter. You're going to pour in 1 cup to 1.5 cups of white rice that's been cooked. I would say if you're going to add more rice, go with a bigger sized dish than a 9x13, but you can definitely add more rice. This is a nice recipe for expanding and adjusting easily if you need to accommodate more people, or if you're making it in bulk to freeze or do for meals later. It's a really versatile when it comes to that. Next, you're going to take your steamed broccoli. I have broccoli florets here, but I've used the cut broccoli cuts and it works just as good. You're going to break it up into whatever size pieces you want. For adults, you can go with bigger. With little kids, sometimes it's easier to break them up into smaller pieces. And then you put on as much as you want. If you've got a bigger bag, maybe you don't use all of it. If you really love broccoli, maybe you cover the whole thing to where you can barely see any rice. It kind of depends on your taste. It's very adjustable, and use what you got, and it works really well. I try to spread it out as evenly as I can. That way I don't have, one kid that ends up with tons and tons of broccoli and the others that don't get any. I am actually convinced that chicken Divan is the reason that broccoli was my favorite green vegetable growing up. So if I had it my way, I would probably even add more broccoli than I do. The reason that I don't add quite as much is that my kids get a little overwhelmed with it. They're not as big of a fan of broccoli as I am, but I can get them to eat it in this dish, which is kind of a feat. If anyone else has any recipes that gets their children to eat vegetables regularly, please drop it in the comments because I'm always looking for more stuff. Next, you're going to do exactly the same thing with your cooked chicken. How you cook your chicken is entirely up to you. I've used old rotisserie chicken when I didn't need to worry about the gluten content. I've used sautéed chicken in a pan. I've used baked chicken. I've used tons of different things. It really doesn't matter what kind of chicken you use as long as it meets your dietary requirement. How big a piece is also subjective. I tend to do really small pieces now because, again, I'm cooking for little mouths. But when I was cooking for adults, I would use much bigger pieces because people can, use a fork and knife and cut it up as they want, and it really doesn't matter. So bite-sized pieces to a little bit bigger depending on your size, and how much the chicken you put on depends on how much chicken you have. If you've got tons of chicken and you're cooking a big portion, then go ahead and layer it on thick. If you've only got one chicken breast worth, then spread it out and make it as even as you can. You can adjust based on your needs, based on your budget, based on who you're cooking for. I would even say if you don't have chicken and maybe you're making this after a holiday and you had turkey, you can use leftover turkey if you want. I've had turkey Divan. It's worked just as well, and it doesn't change the taste a whole lot. Once you have finished with your chicken, you're going to take your sauce and spread it evenly on top. This is not a dish where we actually mix. We're doing a lot of layering. And so just kind of spread gently on top so you're not kind of uncovering quite so much underneath as much as you can. Smooth everything out with a spatula or with the rounded end of a spoon. And be careful as you do, because any of the sauce that ends up on the outer side of the pan has the potential of burning. You'll notice that I spill some on the edge there that I'm going to actually clean up with a paper towel before I do much else with it, so that I don't have to worry about it burning and being really hard to get off later. The final layer of our casserole is a healthy dose of sharp cheddar cheese. I would layer it on nice and thick to where you don't see any of the sauce underneath. If you don't have quite as much, then adjust it so that it's even as best you can. But I would go with a nice thick layer of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. I have not tried this recipe with anything besides sharp cheddar cheese. If you do, let me know how it tastes, because I'm intrigued. But I love the taste of it so much as it is that I'm scared to change it and experiment with it too much. Now prep is done. You can cover it with cling film and stick it in the fridge if you're wanting to save it for a meal for a later date, or you can go ahead and bake it. You're going to bake it at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, uncovered, for 30 minutes, and then it's done. Let it cool just a little bit. Sometimes you can go ahead and dish it out on plates so it can cool faster if you're waiting for little mouths, but it's delicious. A way you can modify this recipe would actually be to leave the rice off and just do all the other layering the same, and you can then scoop it out and layer it on top of the rice afterwards. That's kind of a way to stretch the meal if you need to. You can do a lot more rice and do a little bit of topping. You can also pair this with a fruit salad or with a regular salad or with bread. Those are some other ways to stretch the meal and make it last a little bit longer. But this goes really well for at least 2 solid meals for a family of 6 at the standard portions. Again, you can go with more if you need to cook for more people. But I hope you enjoy. I know I will. Like, seriously, this is so good.